Good morning, good morning, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Well, in the beginning, God created, right? And what did God create? Well, we have to look at the scriptures and look at whatever um, faith doctrine that you walk through to take yourself into the next level of understanding your connection to the universe. Our connection to the universe is so um, important to understand because as we read that we are co-creators, we also become conscious of being a co-creator. I was reading some information from Charles Fillmore, and one of the statements that opened up when I first began to read was, "In the beginning, God." And I believe that, that is a stanza that we can begin to look at as we take ourselves away from the thoughts that we may have been taught concerning God and begin to be a co creator with God. The Bible and whatever faith doctrine that we follow is a personal walk. It had community circumstances because the individuals would have practiced um, as an individual, but they also would have come together as a congregation, as we see in those churches um, in our time. But the church was not, excuse me, a physical building according to Jesus. David built one. So we have different understandings throughout history concerning the way to worship. But I believe that the true way of worshiping is the way that God gives it to you, as long as it begins with a way of cleaning us up, cleaning our hearts out, so that we're not living unhappy and unsatisfied and unpeaceful. Even when I look at the word and I speak unsatisfied, a lot of times we don't understand because desire drives us with unsatisfaction. But the key is if you sit down and you look at in the beginning and you just kind of focus on that, that's meditation. You'll start looking and seeing some things and saying, what does that mean in the beginning? Because a lot of people look at in the beginning they were born and that's the beginning, but there is a rebirthing and regeneration going on in our lives constantly. There are some that impact us heavily, and we know that something has broken down in our lives and we need to fix it. However, a lot of us will overlook that wisdom that is speaking to us, telling us that there's brokenness that needs to be repaired. Brokenness is not outside of us, it's a part of inside of us, right? We may attract people, workplaces, community living. We may attract, but we're attracted to this way because it's inside of us. So we have to take accountability on in the beginning and how I will use those words to begin to recreate my life, bring new beginnings into my life, bring new ideas and new words into my life, right? That's what it's about because every day we wake up, it's a new. I remember Bill Murray and Groundhog Day. If anybody's watched it, you'll laugh with me because he kept doing the loop. He kept going around in circles, but he kept coming back to the same place where he could see his obnoxious behavior towards others. And that was the idea that the universe was giving him, that he had to get sick and tired of himself so that he could change, right? I don't know why it has to take, so much for us. Some people lose everything so that they can make the changes, which is what I tell my leadership group and those that I coach. Your losses are seeming because once you get back up and dust yourself off, you and your creator, as co and creator, unified, you begin to create new out of nothingness, which is transformation. That's the process of the caterpillar and the butterfly. Anything that spiritually dies can spiritually be revived. The um, life and death is in the power of the word. We speak and we kill things in our lives, but we have the power to see that we had, let me say that again. We have the ability to see the power of our words so that we can change the way that we speak and think, right? When I look at co-creating, I look at social revolutions. I look at the 60s. Yeah, I do. I'm reading out of Psychological um, Astrology for the Mind. Grateful Dead, George Sands. I look at Tesla, which was beyond the 60s. I look at the Matrix, the woman that created the Matrix, and she was African American. You know what I'm saying? Which is very and that the way that she created those movies, or the first one and the one where Arnold Schwarzenegger was, a tribute to her and some of the things that she had to go through for that creation to be put in her name where others tried to take it from her. So she fought for that. But it was a creation of someone um, that took it just on a mundane level. She could have took it in her mind and not did anything with it and just looked over the ideas that she had gotten based on, the Matrix. Powerful movie. Creations like Facebook, when we look at all of these different ways of creating, we do have a lot of people that underestimate themselves, and they won't do it because no one is there to support them. But I believe that even the movies, and even with some of the Tesla in the 60s, the marches that went on and that are going on now, which is a repeat of time in history, is a sign that time and things have to change. In the beginning, what will you do? Will you sit on your ideas and just think that you're not worthy enough to speak and proclaim something or go out and advocate for something? In the beginning, today, will you keep the same attitude that you had yesterday or 10 years ago? Will you? Or will you take the freedom and liberty that God gives us today and begin to create out of a new mindset? By the way, you do have to reprogram yourself. You know, if someone is out in the streets homeless, the best thing that they're going to do is begin to tell their self what they have and not talk about what they don't have. The movie with Christopher Garner, you know, he kept putting himself in a position where he could win, even though it looked like he was losing. And this is where you're connecting with your creator. And some would say, well, why do I have to go through it? It might be because the promise is in something greater than what you had prior. But you will have to see that old things, definitely, they have to pass away. But if you hold on to dead things, then you're going to die as well. Dead in the mind, dead in the body, dead in the spirit. Anywhere that there is life, God says that life is promoted. He gives life. And then that means that you're connected to the life giver if you are receiving life. But if you're holding on to old dead things, you're using and abusing people, the system, the way that it operates. It's old and dead, by the way. I'm going to just tell you. That's why the lady created the Matrix, because it was a sign of the times changing, and people are stuck in what they believe. You got to find out what you and God believe first. In the aspect of churches, that is a model that was given. But even when you look in the Bible, you'll see that Jesus did not operate in the church, which is so phenomenal to me that I could see that as a little girl and just sit on it. And people do not relish that they are following Christ, yet they follow the church. So the ideas that we have of what is going to get us there and what is not have to be changed, because God is my help, is my everything, is my lifeline, is my money. God is absolute omnipresence, omniscience. Now, I take it in a passionate way and I use it that way. I'm not following people because people have led us to hell. How you gonna get out? Now the cross is there. We all got a cross to bear. I talked about it yesterday, and I keep repeating because people need to understand that I'm not carrying your cross. You can't carry mine. You carry your own cross, and that's what Jesus was showing us. So if I follow Christ, then that means I'm keeping my eyes straight on Christ. I ain't looking around over here. That, my eyes are bridled like a horse that's being trained to look at the path. And that means that no matter what distractions, I'm keeping my eyes focused right here, and I'm following Christ, and I'm not following the packs of people, because the sheep were the ones that were following the ones in the synagogue. By the way, you had the multitudes sheep. You had the 70. They still were sheep, but they were transforming. That's why the numbers became lesser. Why am I saying this? Because people do not understand the power that they work with. Then the other power that they work with is not connected to God. But I'm talking about in the beginning, when the message comes up and it says in the beginning, what will you do today? Will you be the same person, or will you be a co-creator with God? Now, the other thing I want to ask is, will you be a co-creator with the God of darkness? Because it's there. When you go over in Isaiah 45, you read down around the 11th chapter, you're going to see where God says, I am darkness and I am the light. You have the ability to choose. I realized that in my former years, I had chosen the darkness because that's what I came into this world knowing is darkness. But I had the ability to connect with my God and change it, become the light, and then become balanced to know that all things work together for the good. Therefore, if there's darkness, I'm not calling no one out. I accept people for who they are, what they do, and how they operate. This is God. This is Christ, by the way. This is how Jesus operated, the God in him. He didn't go out there telling them, oh, the man at the pool of Bethesda, oh, you just, you mediocre. You don't want to get up and get healed, and the water is right here. He said, do you want to be healed? 2 words or 3 words, simple. And we make it so complicated to get what we need because we following every voice that we hear, every idea and every person, instead of putting our roots down in Christ like the word says. Now that's how I see it. And no one else has to follow it. But if I'm going to encourage somebody, I'm going to encourage them in a way that's going to make a mark in their life. I didn't heard it all. I heard people's opinions. I don't really care about their opinions because, I'm here. This is me. And whatever I do for the good of people. If they don't see that, then they're where they are. But I had to first start with me, looking at me, getting me together throughout the years, working on me, not working on people. I have a family just like everyone else, but I had to take time with me because I'm important. In the beginning, God said that you are important. When you take that idea, you'll begin to add more to it. It's not just saying it. That becomes a mantra daily because you're building yourself up from brokenness. No one can build themselves up with the same havoc that they lived in, and they know mentally they have to change it. That's why the word is there. The word of God is there to change and transform your life. The words that you speak from the Bible, they transform you. But if you don't show up with transformation, you keep on pushing. And I'm going to say, if you don't show up with transformation, maybe you want to look at why. Because there's no one else. I found that to be. If there was someone in my life that was hurting me, it was a sign that I had hurt someone. So I had to change that. Now, when I realized that, that means that I'm not going to lash out and I ain't going to try and hurt nobody. Sometimes the best thing for people is silence. Sometimes we're trying to talk too much. Communication is not going over very well because we do not connect mentally. Many times we're in that ego trip. When you find yourself in that ego, find out what to do to cut it down. I know that people want to be important, but it's no importance without God. God shines the light on us, you know? And so moving on from there, God is everything in the beginning. Every day is a new day, and every day is a day of beginning, anew. So the words, the woman from the Matrix, African American, so many of us, we need to look at that. We have history that it corresponds to others, and that's okay. But look at your history and look at the greatness that people created so that you can begin to see yourself in a different place. Because I believe that mothers and fathers may have made mistakes, but they don't realize if they don't stop making the mistakes, then their children won't stop. Why would I expect something from my children that I didn't give them? You know, I told my son, you know, I didn't teach y'all how to wash dishes, so y'all threw them away. But it was in reflection to them helping their children out more. As you grow, you become wiser. So I told him, I said, teach them how to wash dishes. And then they'll understand. Don't just tell them to do things, teach them. This is what we have to do in our communities. We have to teach each other. We also have to be receptive. We also have to begin to trust. I understand young women that, you know, if their mothers are not present, I've said this in my leadership meetings, that if their mothers are not present, then they won't know how to be mothered. But even in the instance of you not knowing how to be mothered, because I'm in that mix, you know what I'm saying? A lot of our mothers was there. I love my mother to life. My grandmother was there. Those women gave me a lot of foundation, but it was still a lot of things that I would take on the baton and say, okay, let me find out how to do this, which is to teach my kids that you can't talk to people and just tell them. You got to teach them because we learn differently. So a woman is growing. Like I talked about Ruth, either it was Monday or last week. She followed her mother-in-law and got her blessing. But her mother-in-law had to be a good person to her daughter-in-laws. We have to become wiser and women of grace. Not have to, but you got to get it in your consciousness to be able to lead the women now, because there's so much happening with our children and our young women. They need to be fed. Yes, I know some of them don't want to be fed, but that's okay. When you get a time or, just a minute or two and they're in your presence, just throw some bread. Throw something at them. And when I say bread, I mean the word. Throw something at them and then keep it moving. Don't try to push your impression on them. Just let your light shine. And so for today, I have to do my daily affirmation. I hope you guys get something out of that, because it doesn't matter who you are. If I know you are not, you are great, and God created you for a reason. And so from there, a daily affirmation to get you through. And then we're going to move on with our day. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you, Bettina. I accept that. God bless you. Okay, it says a climate of understanding. This is the affirmation for today. So in the beginning, God created a climate of understanding. But my understanding and others is not the same, and I accept that. So I don't push. If we could generate a climate of understanding, perhaps people wouldn't feel they had to stick so rigidly to their own ideas. It's ironic that we're talking about this, because in the beginning, God started with ideas. Nothing formed until the second chapter of Genesis. Perhaps people wouldn't feel they had to stick so rigidly to their own ideas, but would instead recognize that other people's ideas had value too. So some sensible compromises could be reached. And this is so on time, because I'm throwing in the idea that as the heavens are above our head, and as we are living in the earth, many people have been toiling in the earth, and I keep throwing it in there every time I speak, because I don't want to live in a life where I don't know about earth, wind, fire, and water. I don't want to be in that position. Some people want to study what others have showed them, but I want to know, if I can bind something in heaven, what's really going on there? I don't want to be in a position, if I bind it in heaven and I bind it in earth, I need to know what's going on. I don't need other people's understanding, because we've been living in a place and time where we've been getting other people's understanding. And how are we living now? How are we living now? Trusting in a political system that what? Keeps doing the same thing? That's a loop. In the beginning, God created. What did God create? But then, as a co creator, what do you have the power to create? And that is a vast idea of thoughts. You could write them down and come up with some stuff. And within 30 days, you keep on talking to yourself about, in the beginning, me and God created what? And you're going to get breakthrough. You're going to get phenomenal answers to prayers. Why? Because you brought yourself into the presence with God and you stayed there. You didn't look at what them people out in the political system could do for you. Why would you stop looking at that, by the way? Because if it ain't work now, it ain't never going to work. It's working for them. Oh, yeah, I've been called, crazy. My kids laugh at me. They like calling me, oh, mom this and mom that. Because you know what? I've been teaching you. Don't you get yourself locked up with this system. And I don't care what they say or what they don't like about it. They took a lot of things out of the understanding for people so that they would not rise above the winds of change, so that they would stay broke and disgusted, so that their families would be separated and divided. Yes, they did. But it's people that rise up and they teach. They get the freedom and they don't care what people say. Listen, Peter and them, they were martyred. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that that's what I want. I'm not suffering for nobody anymore. I suffered to get the word and to be able to speak out. I suffered for a while. But now I've grown and I've become wiser to know that it does not matter. Because if a person is not taking care of you, even if they are, they should respect what you're saying. If it is good and kind, you put your boundaries up, they put theirs up. We need to learn boundaries, even with our political system. Stop listening to lies and depending, codependency on these folks. That's another thing. So I'm going to end today, and remember that God is your help. And as you begin to create, God is creating with you heaven and the earth, hell. Isaiah 45, I'm the God of darkness and I create the light. Yes, he did. And someone would skip over that and begin to say that, okay, so what does that mean? It means that there was something taken away. Even in the beginning, there was nothing, so there was darkness in the beginning of the Bible. It's right there. That means that it was darkness because it says it was void as you read on. Void is like stool, cocky. Void is chaos. People been living in chaos almost all of their lives. Some, because I've lived in it. But I'm like, God, how I get out of this? And the only way that you can get out of it is have a day planned every day what you're going to do that's productive. Because chaos is only there because there's no productive thinking within the body and the mind. Your thoughts become resonated with who you are, what you do every day, even when it comes to sickness and disease. The dis-ease and the past traumas is what becomes a way of life within the body. So you bind in heaven and you bind in earth, right? But there's still more to it. Because how did you get the connection with this life of chaos or lack? How'd you get it? Some people will say, well, God did it. Listen, you go deeper. You go deeper. God never gives us more than we can bear. But the day that you were born is a state of fame. And the wise men followed the stars. The wise men, it's in the scripture, by the way. If they followed the stars, where were they following it to? They might have been following their star because they needed to find their star would lead them to Christ, which is not in this earthly realm. So, with all that being said, I will see you guys tomorrow. And yes, they did hide history and they changed it. So, my question to you, sister, is why you're holding on to it. Release it. and let all the wisdom that you have come forward. People need it, but you got to make your mind up about that. Have a good day. Blessings.